Hello everybody, today I'm going to be making a pincushion with you, and I'm going to be using the beautiful embroidered trim from Baby Craft that I received quite some time ago. I actually thought I had finished my design projects for them, but I was missing one, so this is what I'm going to be using, this beautiful trim, and I think you can probably get this in 2 or 3 different colors. I'll try my best to link it in the description box below for this particular one. If I can't find this particular color, I will just link another very similar trim for you anyway. I'm also going to be using some lovely leaf trim that I had in my stash. I have got some little what are they called, like fabric flowers. You can find those, or any kind of flowers you want. I've been using those, like hydrangea flowers, that's the one. I've also incorporated little pieces of the trim in the flowers as well, as you can see from here. All I did was sort of, see, it's got the 3 in there, but I've just made it a little bit dimensional. And the way I did that was I cut off one of the pieces, and I saw, okay, I could probably, there's one little section that just has a couple little threads going through it, so you trim it like that, and then you can lift that part up. You can lift that part up and kind of squash those ones together and sew them like that, and that one stands up in the middle. Anyway, we'll get to that. What I'm starting off with, I'm using the muslin that I was sent from Crafty Me Shop. It's a lovely sturdy fabric. Now this particular pincushion requires a sturdy fabric to make it. And this is not my original idea. The pincushion is actually from a book that I was sent from Jean Ragg a few years ago. It's a lovely little book. It has several different kinds of pincushions and things in it. Vintage style ones, and I'm going to be making this lovely Victorian pincushion. It looks very Victorian in the photo here, but I'm not making mine look Victorian. Mine has a more cottage style to it, which is more to you know, the feeling I've got at the moment. So this is mine. It actually looks like a little shoe, doesn't it? And I've used the lovely trim all around the edge of it like that. And then I've decorated it up. And I'm going to show you how I made that. And it's very simple, so bear with me. You could even put a layer of lace over the top of this if you wanted to. I wanted mine to have a little bit of a more earthy cottage look, so I'm leaving the lace out this time. So the first thing you do is cut yourself a square. This particular one was made from a 6-inch square of fabric, and this particular one is a 5-inch square of fabric, so you can do it any size you want. The next thing you do is fold your fabric corner to corner like that, and that's it. And then all you have to do is sew around the edge. And I'm just putting these pins in here to show you. Sew around the edge and leave a gap. You don't have to leave a gap as big as that particular gap. You could make it a little bit smaller if you wanted to, as long as you can turn your fabric through. So that's about 1 inch or just over 1 inch. So you have to, using a small stitch, I'm using a number 2 stitch on my sewing machine, double stitch at the beginning, sew to the first pin and double stitch, come back over here, double stitch here, and double stitch I mean back stitch, so you sew forward, you sew back, and then you sew forward. Again, I'm going to stitch up to the corner here and then all the way down to this corner here. So I'll go ahead and do that on the sewing machine, and then I will come back. Okay, so I went with a 1/4 inch seam allowance on mine. Just trim that thread there. I have a thread there as well. And from there. Okay, let's get rid of those threads. Once you have stitched from here to here, back stitch, and then all the way around, get a nice little pair of sharp scissors and just trim the corners off. Don't cut your threads though. And then across like that, and you'll see I've just left it a little bit away from the threads so you don't cut those, but just to make it easy when you're turning. And then you get your, open up your little, the hole you left for turning, and mine's only about 1 inch. I could have left it a bit bigger, but it's okay. It's less to sew afterwards. And then just turn it in on itself. So just keep turning it through until it's all gone. Like that. And then using either the back end of a pencil, which is what the instructions say, or like I said, just some sort of implement. Nothing sharp. You don't want to be damaging the fabric or the seams in any way. You don't want to push it through your corners or anything like that. So just very gently ease it around. And just gently taking your time. Okay. There we go. And then you have a triangle. Just fold your seam allowance in where your gap is so that it's nice and straight, because we will have to sew that part closed. And you know, I actually wanted to try a new way of sewing that closed, a little bit different to the one I did last time. Last time, filled it completely up and then stitched it, which worked out fine, which I'll do this time too. I'll try that other thing on something else down the track. Just a little corner. There we go. Don't want to overdo it. Okay, so there's our little triangle. Now what I have here, I'll just move some of these things out of the way. I have some ground nut shells, ground walnut shells, and I bought these last year, and that's how much of the bag it took to fill that pincushion, because you have to fill it very, very full, really, really firm. I could have almost put a bit more in there, but it is wonderful. It works so nicely, and it actually sharpens your pins and needles when you're using it. So what I've got myself a funnel. I think that's the easiest way to fill this up. And so let's hope that this works in front of the camera. And so very carefully, I'm going to use my funnel to fill it. So we'll do that. safely there. And you can do that, or you can, like, you know, get something and help it through. But it generally, as long as you're moving it, it generally empties quite easily. As long as you lift it up as you go along so that the end of the funnel isn't sat inside of the part that the walnut shells inside of the little sock thing we've made here. Alright, so what I'm going to do is just, do that. And so that has filled nicely up to there, as you can see. But it's not quite down in here, so you just need to work it a little bit. So it goes right down into the corner. Let it settle in, settle into there. Like that. And then we do it again, a little bit more, not as much this time because we only have this corner here to fill and this little bit here. So we only need a small amount. Let's see if I can do this. Right, we'll just try that. And I'm just going to turn it a little so that the bottom of my funnel is pointing towards that end there. Let's see if I can get some of that in, and then headed in the other direction to fill that other corner. And you do have to fill it very, you know, compact with this, because you, like I said before, you want to get it all in. Whoa, I hope it doesn't overflow. It's easy enough to clean up. There, a little bit. Okay, so I've got a little bit of room up here. I'm just going to use this to try and get it pushed up there. And that'll give me a little bit of space, I'm thinking, to close the gap. Like that. Let me try and find a bent pin. It might be easier for me. That's it. It's got a slight bend on it. Just to try and curve it around a bit so I can close that up a bit. Okay. Just so I can keep it in place. And then I can maneuver it down there a bit more. There. There, that says, that's really full, but that's what it says to do. And it does work. And it actually says that when you bend it to join the corners together, it says, this is really, really hard. So I'm not sure if somebody had very, you know, if they had sore hands, or problems with their hands in any way. It might be a little bit difficult. You might need to get somebody to help you do that part. But apart from that little bit, it's not hard. I'll just try and get rid of these little bits of walnut here. go. Okay, now with this next part we have to stitch up our little opening. So you need some nice quality, like really good quality thread for this. Okay, let me get rid of that green thread on that because I like this needle. This needle's lovely and sharp, and it's nice and tiny. Now this thread is a scan fill, and it's a nice strong thread. So I'm going to be using that, and I think I'll be using that doubled. See if I can thread. I love this needle, but the eye on the needle is incredibly small. There we go. Okay, we'll knot the bottom of it so it doesn't pull through. I do that a double one so it's nice and big. Trim off that. Okay, so what I'm going to do to start with is just, I want to come this way, but I'm going to put my needle in about 1/4 of an inch before the opening starts, just to as close as I can to the seam. There we go. And that will hide my knot inside of the pincushion. There we go. So that's where my opening starts, but I've pulled my cotton out up here, and I'm just going to do an is it a whip stitch? I'm not sure what it's called. It's just you go in like that, take a little bit of each of the fabric on either side. Could be, you don't want to be having it too big, but then it will be covered because we decorate this seam anyway, so it doesn't have to be ultra tidy or anything like that. And you do that all the way along. Let me just make sure you can see that in the viewfinder. See that? And you do that all the way along until you've closed your gap. So I'll go ahead and do that, and then I'll be back. Okay, so I've stitched all that along there. There's my thread coming out. So I'm just going to do a couple of little stitch, just do a little stitch, knot it off. And secure it. Do another one. And then take your thread under and come out a little bit further up like that. And give it a gentle pull so you're tightening. See how it's runched up? Give that, snip that thread off, and as it bounces back, that thread has gone inside, so that's done. So next, this is the hard part. This is the part we have to join these two, this long edge. We have to fold that in. I may have put too much in. It does work. You've got to work with it. It's really, really hard. And that's why it's important to use a good quality thread when you're sewing your seam up. Look at that. It's got to go like that. And if you do it too loosey, you'll get too much play in it. But there we go. It's got to go like that. And this is what I mean. If you have very weak hands, this may be a little bit difficult for you. You try and get it nice and even so that once you've done it, your pleats that it creates, you know, look as nice as they can possibly look. Like, you're obviously going to get pleats, but when you do it in velvet, it gives a really lovely look. when you're doing it in a thick muslin like this, it's a more earthy look, like I said. Okay, we've got it. So you just got to work with it a little bit, and that's what you do. What I'm using now to sew mine together is some linen thread. This is thick linen thread. You don't need a lot of it because it's nice and strong. So get the strongest kind of thread you can find and do a couple of good knots in it too. Because you don't want this coming out. And the beauty of the linen thread too is the knot holds so well with linen when it's waxed. Right, so that's what we want. So I'm going to go from the inside. Oh, and this is what I found I needed. Like I said, the instructions said this was very hard. You may not need this. It's the thickness of my needle and thread. I need to use that. So that goes like that. Then I'm going to take another stitch and bring it back through and through the other side like that. And facing away from you, use a pair of pliers if you have to. There, got it. But never face it towards you because that could be a little bit dangerous. And then I'm just going to keep putting a couple of stitches in to hold those two little parts together, those corner parts together. And once again, nice firm tug on that. And there, see? And that isn't going to go anywhere once I've knotted that. So I think I'm going to bring the needle on the inside once again. Not that that's really necessary because, like I said, I'm going to be decorating it and it will cover all of this sort of thing. Okay. Take a couple of little stitches now, which is a lot easier, and then put a knot in it. Like that. Okay, there we go. And trim that off. And there we go. And that, oh, that's so firm. It's really lovely. And you can just play a little bit with your creases if you want to. And, oh, it's lovely. And there's quite a difference between a 6-inch one and a 5-inch one. And there's still a little bit of give in that. You know, it's not rock hard. And it does say to make it, what does it say? Quite sure it says firm as a rock. They use sawdust, but I'm using the nutshells. Firm as a rock. So that's how hard you have to stuff it. But I'm sure that will pay dividends with your pins and needles. So decide which way you want up the top and the bottom. That one kind of looks a bit nicer. I think I'll have that as my top, perhaps. You can still play around with the filling a bit when it's done. And now all you do is I'm using this lovely embroidered trim from BB Craft, and I'm just going to see how much I need. So along that edge there you can use lace, you can use braid if you like. I'm going to try and get it so that the tip is in between two of those flowers, and that seems to work quite nice like that. So I'm going to cut mine off there like that, and then just make sure I got it the right way, position it on. Okay, so I start at the tip, get my tip right first, and just grab a couple of pins and pin it in place like that, and keeping it nice and central. Just keep pinning it. You've got plenty of pincushion there to pin it into, as long as you're aiming it, you don't want to be aiming it through this little part here. Aim it into the wider part to hold your braid in place. Like, I'm aiming that up that way now, and then do the same coming back this way. Aiming it into the center of that thick part. Like that. And that'll keep it nicely in place. And you can sew it either from this end or from the tip. It's entirely up to you. And when you do the tip, see, that folds over really nicely. Now, you can stitch this on using a thread, just, well, whatever colour you're working with thread. It does say you can glue it on too, because it can be a little bit difficult to, because it's, it's so firm. It can be a little bit difficult to get the needle and thread. I did sew mine on, and it did take a little bit of time, but I'm glad I did, because this is something I will have for years, and I don't want it discolouring from glue. It did say to use a Yoo-hoo glue, this sort of glue, if you wanted to glue it into place. I'm not sure how long that would actually last. Maybe a bit of fabric glue may be a better option. So, but anyway, that's how it is made. And then, of course, you've got your thread, and you just stitch that on if that's the way you want to do it. And then down the bottom here, once you've finished, you can put a little flower. I've got that one ready to go there, although that looks a bit big because it's a much smaller pincushion, so maybe I'll have to take the outer flower off that I stitched on, although it should, we'll see. Yeah, I might need a smaller one. You could decorate all the way around there. You could put a bow on there if you wanted to. You could put, loops coming off. You can put fringing on it if you want to. What I did, see how that one's nice and flat at the bottom? I got it on a really nice hard surface and kind of squashed it, and see how that makes it a little bit flatter on one side, and that way it's going to sit nicely, and it's not going to move around or fall around because it's got a nice weight to it. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch that on now, and I'll come back and show it to you once I've finished and decided what I'm going to do on the corner here, seeing as that one's a bit big. And as you can see, it's easier to work like from one side to the other, to the other, to the other, because of the angle it's on. That's how I'm going to do it, and it seems to work quite nicely when you do it that way. So I'll go ahead and sew all that on now. Okay, so that's all stitched down. And just finish that off, or I could just bring it over here. I've been playing around with a few different flowers, trying to get an idea, because it doesn't have to look the same as this one. What I've got is a little bit of petal there, one of the outer leaves of one of these little rose buds, and I thought I would use that as well. But I'm actually thinking I might glue those on, because the pins won't be inserted down here at all. So just let me finish that off, and that'll be fine to glue that on down here. Okay, I'll just cut that off. So I'll use a fabric glue, make sure, yep, that's the way I want it. Got a little bit of fabric glue left, and this is the Helmer fabric glue. So I'm thinking maybe like that. I hope I've got a little, yeah, I have just a little bit. That there, like that, because the trim has different shades of green in it. I went with the lighter tones on this, so I think I'll go with that darker leaf on this one. And that's the way the flower's meant to be, but I'm going to flip it over so that the flower goes the opposite way, and it will sit a little bit better there, I think. Like that. I don't have a huge amount in these colorways. It's that peachy color. I do tend to steer more towards pinks than peach, but I do have a few things, so it'll all work out. And let's just glue that on as well. Like that. And I don't have many little skinny ribbons, otherwise I would put a bow, but I just, you know, I don't have a lot of those skinny ones. Let's have a, and there's a little satin flower, and I think Angela Barnum sent those to me, so I'm going to use one of those on there, and I think that will work out quite nice. That could do with something that, oh, I know, see, because that's where they're joined. I wonder if I could just stick, like, I don't want it to Oh, hang on, wonder. It was a 3-pronged leaf, but it just looked a bit too big. But I wonder if I could cut that a bit and stick that down there. Like if I stick that under there and wrap it around, that might work. Okay, I'll just put a little bit of glue on that. Let's have a look. Lift that up a bit, pop that under, and then push that down. And I think that will be fine like that. Hang on. Like that, just like that. Okay. Yeah. I couldn't leave the dark leaf on because it hung right down before, but by cutting a little bit off and repositioning it, it actually looks quite all right like that, I think, and it just covers that little join at the bottom there. And there we go. And I have to say, even just handling this little pincushion has been really lovely. The feel of it, isn't that pretty? The feel of it is just, it's very substantial. Even this little one, very usable as well. They glide in. I love it. And I'm quite surprised because usually I make my pincushions with wadding. And that's all good and well, but after a while you end up felting the wadding and they get harder and harder to put your pins in. And using this is going to be great. I do have one pincushion, the one Jean made me, but it's more an ornamental piece. It's in my little curio cabinet. But these, I think I'm going to use it. I'm going to put one next to my sewing machine, because I'm always looking for somewhere to put my pins near my sewing machine. And one on my desk. I think I really like them. They feel wonderful. So if you get the opportunity to get some ground walnut shells or similar, try making a pincushion with it because they really are quite lovely. And this is a very simple pincushion. It's the decorating that takes the time. And I love the way the braid looks on this. I mean, like I said, you can use different types of braids. You can use lace if you want to. In fact, you don't have to use anything. It's just to decorate it. But there we go. That's my design project, my final design project from BB Craft. And I'm really pleased with how they both turned out. I think they look very sweet, very lovely and pretty. And so thank you to everybody for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Take care. Bye.